This is the final book in the Return trilogy, which was intended to reboot the Vampire Diaries series. I think it's safe to say it was a bad idea to go from 200-page books to giant 600-page books. There is way too much filler material, and the story comes across as unfocused, because it does things like ignore Carolyn for 1,000 pages. But there are some good things about the trilogy. It's not a total waste, so I think if they had continued as 200-page books, I would like it so much better. It would be just a huge improvement. So either cut out huge chunks of the story, or split up all these books into 2 to 3 books each. I think both options would be good ways to improve the trilogy.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
So that is my scripted introduction. Here's my unscripted review of the book. So the big cliffhanger at the end of the previous book is that Damon's human again, and I complain that this was not a very good cliffhanger because he can easily turn back into a vampire. There are 2 vampires here. His brother Stefan could make him a vampire, and Sexy Man Sage could also turn him into a vampire. And Damon casually mentions that there's another group of vampires in town. Oh yeah, we're just gonna throw that information out. So there have been like 4 or 5 vampires living in town this whole time, never shown up, never got mentioned, they're never gonna get mentioned again. It's just a weird throwaway line. Anyway, because they want to stretch out the Damon's human again storyline, Damon gets really picky and decides, I don't want just anyone to turn me into a vampire. I must be bitten by a prestigious vampire, someone powerful. So, yeah, it's kind of dumb. So, human Damon is angry and mean, and he almost kills Elena, but he realizes he loves Elena, and she realizes she loves him for real. So they finally decide they actually love each other and start making out a lot. And he tries sucking her blood just to see if it's as good as it was when he was a vampire. And obviously it's not. It's gross and disgusting. And Bonnie walks in on them in a compromising position, and she screams, and oh, poor Bonnie. I really liked her in book 4, but here in this book, she acts like she's 8 years old. She cries and whines all the time. Like, here, she sees Damon making out with Elena. I think everybody's seen that at this point. But she goes downstairs and she's like, she can't even talk for several pages. That's how upset she is. And it's just very strange. And what Matt does, this is the greatest moment of the book, I think. Matt tells Damon, stop being a jerk. Let's take it outside, punk. And then he punches Damon in the face and knocks him down. Yeah, Damon gets knocked out with one punch by Matt, and that is awesome. Damon's just been so mean to everybody, especially Matt in the previous books. It's great to see Matt finally stand up and get revenge. After this, Damon gets Bonnie drunk, and he kind of seduces her into revealing where the star ball is. So that would be Misao's star ball, which is filled with power. And Damon wants to use that to turn himself back into a vampire. So he sneaks into the basement to grab the star ball when Meredith shows up unexpectedly, and she is a vampire hunter. And it was actually really cool. She's got this cool outfit and this crazy weapon. And it's so cool, you almost forget that it makes no sense. This is book number 7, and Meredith's been a vampire hunter for the entire series, but it's only coming up now? So secretly, she was taking kung fu lessons throughout the entire series. Ever since she was a little kid, she inherited vampire slayer status from her grandfather. It fits the story. It just makes no sense that it hasn't come up before. But it still is kind of cool to see Meredith as a vampire, and she gets into this big fight with Damon. Damon easily overpowers her, which is really stupid because she's been training for this her entire life, and he just got punched out earlier today with one punch. So it's kind of dumb that Damon's able to easily overpower Meredith. Let me continue with Meredith for a while. So later on, her friends discuss her background and this vampire hunter stuff, and they realize, whoa, this means Meredith has a twin brother. That's kind of a huge leap of logic, but okay, it's true. Meredith has a twin brother, and when they were like 3 months old, That's when Klaus attacked them and kidnapped her brother and basically turned her brother into a werewolf. Not a werewolf, a vampire. So every year he's been sending pictures of her vampire brother growing up, and it's strange because vampires don't get any older. And Meredith is a half vampire too. So she has blood sausage every week to prevent herself from dying. She just didn't know she was a half vampire, and she's really distraught because she's a vampire hunter. And again, this is a really cool idea. Like the half vampire hunter, that's neat. But it doesn't go anywhere. We don't follow up on this. Are we going to hear about Meredith's vampire brother again? No. Are we going to hear about Meredith being a vampire again? No. But we've still got 400 pages left. Doesn't matter. Let's move on. So that's what I mentioned earlier. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff they just skip and leave out. That's why this trilogy comes across as unfocused. And I specifically mentioned ignoring Carolyn for 1,000 pages. Okay, well, let's come back to her. Remember, she is pregnant and turning into a werewolf, and she accused Matt of assaulting her. Well, that finally gets picked up on. So Matt is arrested and put on trial, and this was actually pretty interesting. All the police were terrible to Matt, and then the judge was really terrible too. It's obvious they want to give him the death penalty or something like that. So Matt manages to prove his innocence by tricking Carolyn into turning into a werewolf. That proves she's a werewolf and that Matt is innocent. So they do this by bringing in Sage's dog, because Sage has a really big, really strong, really handsome dog, obviously an alpha male dog. So when Carolyn sees it, she goes, "Ow!" and she turns into a werewolf so she can snuggle up against the alpha male. Even though it's not a wolf, it's clearly a dog, and all the other people in the courtroom do it. So the judge is secretly a werewolf, and the lawyers are also werewolves, and they also turn into werewolves and snuggle up against the dog. It's strange. I've never heard of werewolves just loving dogs like that before. It's so weird. So they all get a bunch of cuddle time with Sage's dog, and Matt is now innocent. But Carolyn is still pregnant with Tyler's werewolf twins. We're not going to follow up on that either. I'm told she doesn't show up in the next book at all, but in the following book, she shows up and kind of apologizes for the terrible stuff she's done. So, yay, Carolyn gets a little bit of a redemption arc. Back with Damon and Meredith. So, Damon overpowered Meredith, and he uses the star ball, the power in the star ball, he uses it to open up the gateway to the dark dimension. Bonnie sort of like hug tackles him because she wants to save him. She doesn't want him to go. So both of them go through the portal to the dark dimension, and it's super dangerous. Now, you might remember that, all humans are slaves in this dimension, and if you break the laws, you get whipped, and Bonnie knows this because she has been whipped herself. I should note there is an obvious solution to this problem. They could visit their friends in the dark dimension. It would take 5 minutes, and they would get all the protection they need, but no, they decide to risk it in the most dangerous situation possible. So Damon puts her in a hotel room and says, "Never leave this hotel room. It's super dangerous out there." And it will take 3 days for him to turn into a vampire, because that's how long it takes to, become a vampire. So he basically puts her in this hotel room for 3 days, only she gets really bored after the first day, and she's like, "It's so boring sitting in a room all day, gosh." She sees a candy store across the street and decides, "I want to get some candy." And so she breaks out of the hotel room to get some candy. She's immediately picked up by slave traders and sold as a slave. And who should buy her but Shinichi, the evil villain? And I thought that was a really cool plot twist. But nothing really comes of it. So what happens is Damon shows up and he just kind of is mean to Shinichi and takes Bonnie away, and now she's safe. The end. So Damon becomes a vampire again. He goes to the vampire princess Jessalyn. It's not explained why there's a vampire princess. Apparently vampires have royalty now. She's only been a vampire for about 2 years, though. And she doesn't seem to know anything, really. She acts like she's 12 or something. I don't know. I've been around 12-year-olds who are more intelligent than she is. She just kind of sits in her room all day, and she gets sad because everything's black and she doesn't like it. And she asks her maid, "Could we get some color in the room?" And the maid gets like an off black pillow and says, "There you go, your highness." It's like, okay, that's weird, and that's basically the main complaint in Princess Jessalyn's life. Damon puts on this weird act while trying to seduce her, so he acts like it's the 1300s again. It's strange, it works, and he becomes a full-blooded vampire again. So that's about 150 pages into the book. It makes you wonder why we went through all the trouble of turning Damon into a human. Yes, that was a good cliffhanger, but he almost immediately becomes a vampire again. So, like, why did we even bother? So, in the Dark Dimension, Bonnie has a dream vision of a fairy tale about kitsune. So there were these kitsune, they went on a long journey and they reached this area where there were 7 fantastical doors, and behind each door was a treasure. Like one room has, the Fountain of Youth, and the other has a giant tree, and the other has a really pretty flower. And some of these treasures are not like the others. And then one room has a bunch of wine. So the kitsune messed up in trying to get the treasures. It's basically a fairy tale warning you, don't screw up, don't be greedy. Our heroes decide, wow, this must be a vision that is true. That must be the truth. We're going to have to follow this. So they follow the vision. And again, this could have been interesting. It was sort of introduced as a challenge quest, like they have to solve all these puzzles and tests of endurance to prove themselves worthy of reaching this paradise area. And that could have been cool, but it really ended up being them walking through the Arctic. That's basically it. It's a very snowy area. They walk across a lake, they go across a bridge, and Elena and Damon basically get really close together. So basically, it just ends up being an excuse for Elena and Damon to make out all the time, even though Stefan's there. Shinichi shows up and taunts our heroes, and this is how Shinichi dies. He says, "I wish I'd never come to your town," and he dies instantly, because regret is one of the things that kills a kitsune. That was mentioned about 1500 pages ago. Good luck remembering it. It was just a really unsatisfying death scene. We've got the main villain of the trilogy who's caused so much trouble, and our heroes defeat him by getting him to say a sentence. And it's not like they were doing it on purpose, trying to trick him into killing himself. No, he just says it out of nowhere of his own volition and dies. Our heroes beat him without trying. It's so unsatisfying. So back in town, it's midnight. The last midnight is what they call it. All the children are going to wake up at midnight and kill their parents, and the entire town is going to be wiped off of the map. And our heroes realize, oh my gosh, there's been a secret villain manipulating things from behind the scenes. It's the old Japanese woman. She's actually an evil Japanese goddess from 4,000 years ago. And while this could have been a cool plot twist, it didn't really work for me because I didn't remember who she was. There were 2 different old Japanese women, and I couldn't tell the difference between the 2 of them, to be honest. There's a confusion about their names. That's how our heroes tell that she's actually an evil goddess, because their names get confused and mixed up. Well, if you've got these characters that are confused and mixed up, it's kind of hard for readers to know which one is which, right? So that's why it was a little confusing. So they get into the big fight with her to try to stop the midnight. Mrs. Flowers turns into like a 20-year-old woman thanks to power from Sage, and they get into the big fight. But the book ignores that. So Meredith and Matt take a look at the house. The house is burning, so they go into the house to try to save the 2 people that are inside the house. And the book spends like 20 pages of our heroes crawling around the house trying to find the people inside, and Meredith's not sure if she should bring her weapon or not, or if she should leave it behind. And by the time they come out, the fight is over. The evil Japanese goddess was killed. She was killed while our heroes were crawling around a burning building. And yeah, it's really unsatisfying. Another main villain who's killed in just an unsatisfying way. Killed off screen when nobody was paying attention. So back with our heroes in the treasure realm, they finally make it to the doors with all the treasures, and they go to the Kitsune Paradise, where there's a large star ball filled with Kitsune power, and that's actually the one that belongs to Japanese goddess. So Bonnie tries to grab it, but she falls into a trap. Damon sacrifices himself to save her, and then he gets a death scene, a really long, drawn-out death scene. Elena says goodbye to him, then she says goodbye to him again, and then Bonnie says goodbye, and then Stefan says goodbye, and then Elena says goodbye again, going into his mind, and talking to the little boy that represents his soul. It just is a long death scene which goes on forever, even longer than the fight against the big Japanese goddess who is the secret villain of the entire series. So, eventually, after much crying and bemoaning the fact that her beloved is dead, Elena uses her wings of destruction to destroy the entire planet. So that destroys the star ball. So that destroys the main source of power for the Japanese goddess. That's why the Japanese goddess was destroyed. So our heroes go back to the rooms of treasure, and Sage is actually the one who's in charge of the treasure rooms. He's totally pointless. They could have left him out of the entire series. They kind of built him up to be this guy who would become important, but he's not. It's kind of hinted that his father is the devil, but nothing comes of it. We don't really follow up on that. They could have gotten rid of him entirely, and it really wouldn't have affected the series. So, they go through all the various doors to the treasure rooms, and they load up on treasure, and then they go outside where a bunch of guardians are waiting to arrest them. The guardians are like angels, right? So they get taken to the angel realm and taken to angel court, and they make a deal with our heroes. Elena promises to hand over all the treasure to them if they change everything. Basically, they'll hit the reset button and take everything back to the start of the first book of the Vampire Diaries series. So Elena will be living with her family again, and Stefan will be her boyfriend, and nobody will die, nobody will know he's a vampire, and none of these Kitsune villains or Klaus. It's just everything's going to be wonderful and happy, and that's just a really weird note to go out on. It's like, we're just going to change everything. Oh, and get this. So, you know how Elena's parents died? Apparently, that was angels trying to grab Elena and turning her into an angel guardian. They just wanted to kill her so she could become an angel guardian, but they messed up and accidentally killed her parents. So anyway, that's why Elena came back to life at the end of book 4. She was always intended to be an angel guardian, and that's why she has angel wing powers now. And she tries to use her wings powers, but the angels get mad and just get rid of her wings powers. So really, what was the point of making her an angel and giving her wings powers? She uses her wings, what, 1, 2, 3 times? Basically to save them at the end of book 5, to save them at the end of book 6, and then again here at the end of book 7 to save them is basically a deus ex machina. They only showed up when she needed to save people. It's not like it was anything she could control or think about. It's kind of a useless superpower in retrospect. So the sad part is, even though they undo everything, they can't bring Damon back to life because, oh, vampires, when they're dead, they can never come back to life, ever. So they reset everything, but Elena tricked them, right? So she put the fountain of life water inside her water bottle in her backpack, and the angels just thought, oh, it's just normal water. Yeah. So she's got a bottle full of the bottle of life, and she's got enough for like 5 sips. This must be a really tiny water bottle, right? Like, maybe it's only half full or something? In any case, well, now she's got the fountain of life in her backpack in her room. Okay, what's she gonna do with it? I don't know. Stay tuned for the next book and find out. She's probably gonna go living on forever with all of her friends, or she's just gonna drink it herself and live on forever with Stefan. Either way. And the final cliffhanger is, on the planet in the other world, a bunch of dust gathers into the sky on the moon, and it's Damon, and he wakes up, he goes, I'm Damon. So Damon's alive again, too. So that's the end of the book. I enjoyed the first third of the book. I thought that was really good. It reminded me of the main trilogy. That's why I recommend splitting up this series into 200-page books, because the first 200 pages were great, and if the book had ended there, I would be so happy. So what was the good stuff that happened? Well, Meredith the vampire hunter. Whoa! Matt has that really cool trial. Yes! And then the main villain buys Bonnie as a slave. Ooh, the drama! But nothing comes of any of that stuff. So that's where the book falls apart for me. Like, okay, Shinichi bought Bonnie. So what? Nothing happens. Meredith has a vampire twin brother. okay, we're never going to hear about him again. Instead, the book turns into this trek through the Arctic. It's not interesting. It's really bad, and that's where the book falls apart. I didn't like the ending third, where the villains are killed in a very unsatisfying manner. Misao, I forgot to mention her, she kind of dies when nobody's paying attention, as does the secret villain, the Japanese goddess, kind of dies when we're not around. And Shinichi dies because he says, I wish I had never come to your town. He just dies out of nowhere. It's very unsatisfying. I really wanted to see a fight like the one at the ends of books 3 and 4. That would have been so much better. Or even book 5, a big fight like at the end of book 5. That would have been good too. I wanted a fight against the villains. That seems to be what the book was building up to, considering it's happened in previous books, and we didn't get it. And also the romance. I guess the romance is okay. I'm not really a big fan of Elena being in love with Damon and Stefan at the same time. That's where the book goes. She loves both of them equally, although Damon kind of more. So overall, I like the first third of the book, and the rest of the book not so much. I did think it was better than the previous book, so I will give it 1 point higher. I give Vampire Diaries number 7 a 6 out of 10.